All right, let's take you back to our top story now. There's been widespread outrage over South African tourism's plan to sponsor Tottenham Hotspur. The football club sent a presentation on the proposed deal worth nearly £1 billion. Now, Manchester United has told eNCA it's not unusual to send prospective partners material like that presentation. For more on this, let's take you to the UK now, where we find my colleague, our correspondent, Olly Barret. Olly, thank you very much again for joining us. I believe that there's an update, but before we talk about Tottenham Hotspurs and whether or not an announcement will be made soon about this deal finally being signed, Manchester United telling eNCA that, it's not something that they wouldn't have done. It's something that they were looking at too.
Yeah, the reason why I put this question to Manchester United was because yesterday afternoon, SA Tourism's COO tweeted out a picture of what appeared to be a Manchester United shirt with SA Tourism logos on it. And this was described in the tweet by SA Tourism's COO as a new proposal coming from Manchester United. And the implication was that perhaps there was some competition to get the signature of SA Tourism and clearly some funding from that particular account, and trying to paint a picture of competition, shall we say, for a deal like that to be done. Well, that's why I put the picture and the message to the Manchester United press team to get a response, to try and get some kind of verification about exactly what hadn't happened in terms of a so-called proposal. And Manchester United would only say that they don't comment on confidential sales processes, but they did say, as you say, that it's not unusual for us to create mocked up assets of this kind for prospective partners. They go on to say in this brief statement there's never any certainty that such processes will result in sponsorship agreements, but that description of South Africa as a potential prospective partner, I think, was interesting from Manchester United. Of course, what we don't know with that very short statement is whether Man United are trying to insert themselves into this conversation because of the row over the possible deal with Spurs, or whether this is something entirely unconnected. I don't get the impression that the Manchester United conversation or proposal or a prospective partnership, whatever you want to call it, has got very far along in terms of conversations, but it's just an interesting one to keep an eye on nonetheless.
And Olly, I mean, a lot of South Africans would agree that Manchester United would probably be a better side in England in terms of the amount of support they have and where they are on the log to probably get into this deal with. But it wouldn't take any of our problems away. And this is the conversation that I was also having with you and other panelists yesterday. Tell me, when it comes to the deal with Tottenham Hotspur, Olly, is there any update with regards to that? Are you hearing anything from your sources about an imminent announcement?
Well, just on that prospect of a Manchester United deal, I mean, one of the things that you would imagine if a Manchester United deal were to be in the offering, for exactly the reasons you set out, would be that potentially it might be more expensive than the one that is being discussed with Spurs, because, as you say, they are a bigger global brand. In terms of where we go next with Spurs, what I'm hearing is that conversations are very much still alive with Tottenham Hotspur and the South African side, but certainly SA Tourism is really directing us now towards the consultations that it wants to carry out in South Africa with key stakeholders to try and convince them that this deal is the right way to go. Certainly SA Tourism, in that press conference we heard yesterday, very clear that this is a deal that they still want to do. What was also interesting in that press conference from the acting CEO on Thursday was this idea that it was always designed to be the case to have those consultations with stakeholders after the SA Tourism Board, had reached an agreement that this was a good deal to do. Well, I can tell you via numerous sources that an event was planned at Tottenham Hotspur this week in which the announcement was going to be made, and it wasn't just vague planning. Guests were being invited. There was the prospect of former Spurs players being there to give interviews and talk about this deal. We were as far along from some of what sources are telling me as the menu having been nailed down for the guests to dine on. So what I'm doing here is trying to create a picture of an event that really was, from both sides, from the Spurs side and the SA side, considered to be very close indeed. And that takes us back to the conversation we've been having earlier in the week when sources close to the deal have been talking about an imminent announcement. That is absolutely what they felt was going to be the case. And going back to that point, therefore, on consultations, that would raise the prospect of SA Tourism feeling that it could probably get those consultations done quite quickly between board agreement and a launch announcement at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this week. And going back to your question, there is no sense now, I think, that that kind of launch announcement at Tottenham Hotspur is any more imminent. I think we are now looking at a longer term process to all of this because of the controversy in South Africa and therefore the extra difficulty that that might inject into those consultations. I think the leak of this information midweek is crucial to all of that. I think people close to the deal feel that that really did throw off discussions and consultations and just inject some extra difficulty into the entire process. And I think there is a feeling among those close to the deal that if they'd been able to go to their schedule, that this might have run more smoothly because they might have been more on the front foot, they might have been more in control of the messaging. That, of course, is hard to say whether that would indeed have been the case, but there's, I think, no sense as we speak right now that Spurs and SA Tourism are suddenly going to announce that the deal is done and signed. Those consultations in South Africa are absolutely what we're being pointed to now in terms of where we go next.
And I was going to ask you about that, Olly. I'm sure you also saw on Twitter, at least from South Africans, how they felt about the demeanour of the acting CEO, Themba Masego, especially when he, was saying that I want to look at you from this camera. And he was talking about how un-South African the leak was. He looked quite, peed off at that leak. And I was just wondering how, those that they might be partnering with in England might be feeling about this particular leak. They are probably feeling as though it's going to derail everything. Are they, telling you that they don't even want the deal anymore, or are they still where South African tourism is with still wanting it to go ahead?
Spurs are being very quiet indeed publicly, still refusing to comment publicly, saying that they don't comment on commercial matters. I'm told that the conversations between SA Tourism and Spurs remain in a good place, remain civil, and that effectively it's a wait-and-see process now. But you would imagine that there is some unease at Tottenham Hotspur about the huge controversy behind this deal. You'd also imagine that if the deal goes ahead and £42 million is coming their way, not far off £1 billion, that Spurs will be probably happy to ride out this storm, as it were, if the deal is indeed going to eventually get done. But for now, still no public comment at all from Tottenham Hotspur about all of this. But as I say, the one thing I can tell you for sure via numerous sources is that Spurs and SA Tourism, and Spurs crucial to that clearly, in hosting an event at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, that is absolutely what they were planning for this week. We're just not quite sure exactly when or if that might now happen.
All right, Olly, thank you so much for speaking to us. We'll probably still be talking to you sometime next week. Maybe you'll hear about yet another event at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and then we'll come live to you. Thank you, as usual, our UK correspondent, Olly Barret.